A shadowy flight into the dangerous world of a man who does not exist.
Start your engines! I am the Kaiju no Kami, and this is my review for Kamen Rider Drive. Aside from premiering on the exact 35th anniversary date of Skyrider, there's nothing too notable to note about Drive's production history. Riku Sanjo, the head writer of Double, returned to helm the show, which makes me ponder why they didn't do any sort of crossover between the two outside of one minuscule appearance of Excel during a special. The most remarkable thing Drive has going for it is being the first series since Black RX to have its lead hero drive a car rather than a motorcycle. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, Drive's biggest hurdle was coming after the masterpiece that was Kamen Rider Gaim. Thus, Drive was put into a bad position, which makes you wonder, is it worth driving through, or should you speed right past it? Let's find out. The heroes. For the first time in a long time, Drive features a Kamen Rider who is also a police officer. Our titular rider is Ryoma Takeuchi's Tomari Shinosuke, a detective who starts the show off in a slump, only to strive to be the best hero he can be after acquiring the abilities to transform into Kamen Rider Drive.
上の命令なんかより市民を守ることの方が大切ですから。
確かにその通りです。でも君は刑事を辞めてはダメですよ。お父さんの死が無駄になってしまう。
Shinosuke's dad was a great detective who died protecting a child during a bank robbery, though the details are quite suspect. Nevertheless, he tries to live in his dad's footsteps. He ended up joining a special division to the police force that was formed after the world experienced an event a year prior where everyone started moving in slow motion as if they had become a part of a computer program or something.
ディナーを楽しんだりしているその時に。
This event, known as the Global Freeze, caused Shinosuke's partner to being injured, which is what kicked off his year-long depression in the first place. You know Shinosuke's on top of his game the moment he tightens his tie.
俺が作ったモンタージュだ。まずはこいつを見つけ出す。
I guess he thinks better when he cuts off all of the oxygen to his brain? As Kamen Rider Drive, Shinosuke can take on any villainous vermin who try to harm the innocent. It also renders the slowdown ability these beings, known as Roidmutes, utilize mute for he is unaffected by them. He transforms by inserting a micro machine into a bracelet around his arm that is wirelessly connected to his belt.
Drive! Type Speed!
These tiny vehicles, shift cars, gives him a variety of abilities and forms he uses to contend with the Roidmutes. His main form is called Type Speed, which is mostly a red and black form with a standard looking tire around his body. The basic shift cars can change out the tire Shinosuke dons, with my favorite being Shadow due to its purple color, on top of it firing ninja shuriken blades. The shift cars even seem to have their own personalities, as we learn with the very moody Vegas one.
ベガス自身敵でもあるからな。半年前、彼の親友ディメンションキャブはボディに重傷を負ってしまい、今戦線離脱している。それ以来、シャレっ気のある彼の遊び心は消えた。
Whoa, it's getting a little film noir up in here.
Oh, woe is me. I'm a lonely... hello? Can't you see I'm monologuing here?
Of course, the Vegas car provides one of my least favorite looking designs for Drive. Yuck. One of my biggest criticisms of this setup is that Drive acquires way too many accessories to keep track of. It got quite tiresome. The more powerful shift cars give Shinosuke full-on new forms that include a black form, a green one, and a blue and white one that resembles a Formula One race car. There's also a shift car that increases his defense against powerful attacks called Dead Heat. The downside of Dead Heat is that it may injure the user if he doesn't shut it down before it overheats.
Finally, there is his ultimate form, which occurs after he merges together with Trideron.
Derive! Time to ride!
One thing I love about Shinosuke, outside of having a great personality with an intriguing backstory revolving around his father, is that he is terrible when it comes to naming his weapons. He'll be given a new weapon and comes up with the most uninspiring name ever for it.
新開発は SO1 号機でできている。名前は未定だが。
どう見てもハンドル剣だろこれ。
いや、見たままだね。
これはドア銃。
そろそろそのネーミングセンスから離れないか。
いや、ドア銃で決定。
Shinosuke's henshin belt is actually a sentient being known simply as Mr. Belt. It turns out that Mr. Belt was once a man who helped create the Roidmutes, and when they murdered him, he stuck his mind in the consciousness of a machine in order to carry on his work to stop them.
It is quite impressive how much character development we are given towards the dude, as Sanjo really made sure the audience would feel sorry for him as time went on.
Mr. Belt is voiced by Japanese-American television show host Chris Pepler.
すまん、感情的になりすぎた。キリコやゴーの気持ちを考える余裕がなかった。
Shinosuke's partner in superheroing is the policewoman Kiriko Shijima, played by Ryo Uchida. Kiriko was initially a traffic cop until the night of the global freeze, where she found herself being what seemed to be disintegrated by a Roidmute until she was rescued by a man wearing black armor. Afterwards, she was recruited by the Special Crimes Unit, being paired up with Shinosuke and eventually falling in love with him. Thus, she does anything she can to support him, even down to kicking ass herself.
Start your engine!
I really like Kiriko for, despite not being a Kamen Rider, she will constantly put herself in danger for the benefit of others. It is also revealed in one of the movies that she attempted to don the mantle of Drive before Shinosuke was given that honor. After all, Kamen Rider is a man's show. We don't need any of those cootie carriers teaching young women that they can be lead superheroes too. Speaking of men, Kiriko's younger brother Go comes back to Japan after being in America for a good while with the capability to transform into Kamen Rider Mach. Go trained to be Mach in America, hence the whole Evel Knievel setup. As with many secondary riders, Go shows up with a huge ego, only to be knocked down a few pegs as the story progresses.
追跡撲滅いずれもまあちょっと最後まで言わせろって
On the other hand, he has immense hatred for the Roidmutes, which is fleshed out over the course of the show. As Mach, he rides a motorcycle and uses a gun weapon most of the time. Aside from sharing the Dead Heat form with Shinosuke and one at the very end of the series, Go does not have much in the way of additional forms, which was quite nice. It's also worth mentioning that his mentor and creator of the Mach system, Dr. Harley Hendrickson, is played by the late Ulf Otsuki in his final Toku appearance.
これだアメリカからのお土産二人で仲良く食べなさいでももうクリムは食べます仲良く食べんだよ
You should remember him from the likes of Godzilla vs. Megalon, Kamen Rider Stronger, Super 1, Die Ranger, and Kaku Ranger. The rest of Shinosuke's team at the Special Crimes Unit involves his boss and former friend of his father's, Jun Hoganji.
はいそれではチーム分けしますよとばりちゃん、キリコちゃん、西条君はそのアトリエの調査を
A scientist who offers her services to them named Rina Sawagami.
それはロイミュード本体の重加速能力を分け与える端末だと思う
A software engineer who is also an unofficial employee nicknamed Q-Boy, Q Saijo.
なんだ仮面ライダーってどんなデザインになったの赤かったデグ
Dude, that's creepy.
And a liaison with the police, who is also the laughing stock of said police force for being utterly incompetent, Genpachiro Ota.
また仮面ライダー見損ねちまった
They are all portrayed by Surutaro Kataoka, Reiyoshi, Kenta Hamano, and Taira Imata. Q is hands down my least favorite of the entire group, and perhaps my least favorite character in the entire series.
It's kind of funny to say that about an avid anime lover, but he didn't do much of anything to make me like him.
The one episode that revolved around him ended up being my least favorite episode of the series, and it made me like him even less than I already had before. Rina is the quirky scientist who comes up with the SCU's oversized devices used to track Roidmute activity. It is also revealed that she is the one who helps Mr. Belt with new inventions and gimmicks that assist Shinosuke in being successful in his endeavors. Regrettably, I have mixed feelings on Rina due to the incoherent way she is written. There's a pair of episodes that introduce a former lover of hers, and she comes across as being really desperate, which diminished her character a tad. Then there are times she is written to be beyond silly, which got annoying.
外れだなこりゃ
I kind of felt the same about Honganji initially, as I was not a fan of his at the start for the same reasons. He just came across as nothing more than comic relief.
君は残るよね僕は残るよね警察官じゃないので残るよね避難します
Only for the show to actually pull a 180 on us halfway through and have there be a reason for the way he acts. It was quite impressive and made me appreciate him far more than I had previously, to the point where he ended up being a top tier character in the series. Even Genpachi ended up being a likable character despite his over-the-top antics at the start. He has a good heart and will put his all into doing the right thing even if it costs him his life in the process. The best episodes to show off this quality side of his persona ended up being my favorite episodes of the series, so I will go into detail on that later.
心を照らす太陽だかけがえのない確かにそれを奪われた時 世界は闇に包まれ凍りつく。
We also come to find out that his inability to remember the names of the Roidmutes may not be of his own making, but rather something else going on intrinsically altogether. Our final rider is Chase. Or Chaser. I'm not exactly sure what his name is because the subtitles kept changing it. Sometimes it was Chase, sometimes it was Chaser. Either way,
He requires some major plot spoilers. As such, if you do not want to know the details of The Last Rider, skip to the villain section of this review.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You have been warned. Taiko Kitano does a hell of a job to bring to life this robotic character who has to act emotionless most of the time. When we first meet Chaser, he is a villain the Roidmutes have coined the Grim Reaper, for his job is to stop any Roidmutes who have gone against their central programming. He is not to kill them, rather destroy their physical bodies so their data can be reset to their original factory settings, as it were. Thus, he becomes a constant threat against Shinosuke and crew, for they always seem to be getting in his way. A rivalry is formed for a while until Mr. Bell comes to learn that Chaser is actually Proto Drive, the one who saved Kiriko and many others on the night of the global freeze before he was presumed dead after a battle with one of the Roidmutes' top dogs. Halfway through the series, Chaser realizes the error of his ways and ends up becoming a hero. It is interesting to see him attempt to learn what it means to be a human, specifically in a couple of episodes where he works on getting his driver's license and then continues to remind us of that fact as time goes on. My favorite moment of his might be the time he transformed in front of his driving instructor due to a monster attack that was occurring. Another solid scene was when he gave us his axe weapon to go to hold on to as it charged up in the midst of battle. On the downside, Chaser was a very repetitious character during the first half of the show, and one of the weakest aspects to it until he changed sides. Afterwards, he became a character you will weep for. The villains. The Roidmutes are an interesting lot. At the start of the series, we are told there are 108 of them in existence, which seems to be quite a lot. Once the ball gets rolling, you'll come to realize that number means very little, as the vast majority of them are nothing more than basic looking creatures with the forms of a bat, spider, and cobra. Now granted, movies and specials will find a way to work around that number, but we'll ignore the minor inconsistencies. The concept is an interesting one, even if the vast majority of them come across as nothing more than generic grunts who are easily dispatched. The main threats are those who evolve into a grander form, which tend to become the typical monsters of the week. One of my biggest frustrations with them is those with the cooler designs, such as this skeleton cowboy dude, tend to have little to no screen time. It also seemed like the farther we got into the series, the less impact the standard Roidmutes matter. They were there just to die. I know you're asking, but isn't that the point of a monster of the week? Yes, it is. However, you can still have a monster from a single episode leave some sort of imprint on the viewer that makes them like that monster a lot. Just look at Kamen Rider Black, Blade, Agito, and a lot of Sentai monsters. There are a plethora of them that leave me wanting figures of those monsters, and wish we had gotten a specific adversary in multiple episodes. With Drive, by the end,
I found myself unable to care what the Roidmutes were because they had become frivolous.
Some of them did have beast forms that were initiated upon defeat.
Terrorize!
On paper, that sounded unique, only for the execution to just devolve into lackluster CGI battles.
The hierarchy leading the Roidmutes to glory is a trio under the name of Heart, Brain, and Medic.
The earth remains a goal, some things they can't control. They're Pinky, Elmira, and the Brain.
Of these three, Heart is hands down the standout. He has the same amount of character growth Toei seems to give their evil Kamen Riders in recent series without being an evil Kamen Rider. It's kind of refreshing.
俺の目的はただ一つだ。創造主である人間を 真正面から打ち破り支配することだけだ。
人間を支配する、滅ぼすんじゃないのか。
ああ、こっちは元から悪のつもりはない。
Tomoya Warabino does a spectacular job of giving this character a lot of heart. He finds a way to make you understand his point of view and sympathize with him without it feeling forced.
I wish I could say the same for Brain, who annoyed me.
I'm not sure if it was just the way the character was written, or if actor Shoto Matsushima just wasn't able to handle the material given to him, but I started to really dislike Brain as the series progressed. He turned from this threatening, super smart badass into a wimpy whiner who would cower away from dogs and break down into tears when things didn't go his way.
そもそもその犬は何だ。あなたが知る必要はない。黙って協力なさい。汚らわしい。お座り。
He actually reminded me of Takuma from Fies, given they both had similar character assassinations. Medic is an okay character.
I liked her at the start, at least until she started to become a bore by the halfway point. Fortunately, her story picked up by the finale.
All of the Roidmutes are actually based on a person in reality.
Sometimes they kill the victim they have taken their form from, sometimes they leave them be, or in other cases, they merge with the human to become a greater threat.
本物のジョージはもういないんだな。そう。俺は死の直前に奴をコピーした。あいつはナルシストの見えっ張りだった。
That line is absolutely priceless. In Medic's case, we come to learn of a tragedy that occurred with her original's persona and how it helped turn her character to the dark side. She is pretty much the white mage of the Roidmutes, for she can heal those who are damaged by Drive and his cohorts. The biggest annoyance to her character is her desire to always please Heart to the point where it comes across disingenuous. What didn't help her case was how stilted Fumika Baba came off throughout the majority of the show.
もうよろしくてよ。ガンマンたちのコアを直しようがありませんもの。
There are a couple of other higher-ranking Roidmutes, though they're not given as much screen time as our lead triumvirate.
There's the Tony Stark-looking one.
私は君をコピーした。
Another is by the name of Freeze, who is able to manipulate people's memories. Sadly, he does not resort to ice puns. Wait, isn't that a good thing? Actually, Freeze might be the most interesting villain next to Heart on the show, given how much his character had impacted the overall narrative. Oh, and in typical Toei fashion, we've got an evil version of Drive for a villain. Yay! Gotta love those last-minute Evil Rider final boss types. The effects and music. The effects can be a mixed bag at times, while the soundtrack is very pleasing to the ears. The worst aspect of the show's effects is the CGI, for it can get a tad distracting at times, especially in major vehicle battles. It isn't bad enough to break you from the show's immersion, as you can tell the people behind it did the best work they could given the budget limitations and time constraints the show most likely endured.
There are multiple moments of spectacular camera work, some in battle, some not.
Hey! もう私のことなんか忘れて、どこかで新しい恋人と幸せに暮らしてる。そう思ってました。お前とまた戦える喜びの方が上だ。
The slowdowns that occur thanks to the Roidmutes add some interesting aspects to battle scenes, to the point where sometimes they even feel like they could be ripping off other stories with just the right music added. The soundtrack was divided between two composers, with the first being the man who helmed those found in Kiva, Den-O, and Forze, Shuhei Naruse. Kotaro Nakagawa was Drive's second musical genius, who has done the likes of Kamen Rider Double, Decade, O's, Wizard, and a bunch of anime series including Code Geass and Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V. There are a vast variety of tracks that were a pleasure to constantly hear throughout the show's entirety, with some of my favorites being these.
さらわれた人たちだ。まだ生きてる。諦めろ。もう逃げられないぞ。ミラ。
俺は捕まらねえよ。絶対にな。
俺はお前のダチじゃね
え。ダチ。
超進化体とは進化の最終ステージ。たどり着くための条件。
The noir-like music to the keyboard really adds a unique flavor to the score, similarly to the use of the violin in Kiva.
Shinosuke.
俺の親父もデカだった。
Mitsuru Matsuoka's opening theme, Surprise Drive, will never make the list of being one of my favorite openings. However, it is a pretty solid song throughout. I really dig this part. The episodes. Kamen Rider Drive is a bit weird, for the first half can get a tad repetitious, while the second half is utterly magnificent. The biggest issue with the first half is the villainous Codename Purple. If you skip the spoiler section of my review, Codename Purple is a villain who was brought in to stop Drive from killing off more Roidmutes. As such, every episode after his introduction plays out in almost the same manner. A Roidmute commits some crime, Shinosuke investigates, confronts the Roidmute, Codename Purple shows up to stop him, a battle ensues, and Shinosuke gets away. This was repeated ad nauseum throughout the first half of the show, and it got really boring at times because you knew how it was going to always play out. Thankfully, once the formulaic aspect got knocked to the wayside in the second half, the plot really kicks into top gear and the show becomes a joy to sit through. There are a lot of conspiracies, mysteries, and intrigue going on that keeps you at the edge of your seat in anticipation for what was going to happen next. It was here where the show really started to shine and become a cop drama that had Kamen Riders in it. In fact, it's most likely what Kuga or Agito would have been like had they been made during the second half of the Heisei era as opposed to kicking it off. Therefore, it's a cop drama with the merchandising machinations that Kuga and Agito lacked. With that said, while I was tempted to declare the episodes revolving around Shinosuke's dad as my favorite, I'm going to go with the aforementioned 18 and 19, which are Why Did Lieutenant Oda Chase Him? And What Will Judge the Police? In this pair, a criminal known as Judge is going around attacking other criminals. We get to see Lieutenant Oda at his finest as he helps his former mentor, Tachibana, investigate the assailant Judge for a murder that was covered up as a suicide 5 years prior.
死んだはずのジャッジが再び現れて、5年前に自分が犯した偽装殺人がバレやしないかと。今回の騒動に刺激され、必ず動き出す。
There's quite a bit of mystery occurring on top of watching the characters be efficient at their job. This was the first story in the series where I felt like the characters were actually cops, because the whole story progressed like an actual cop drama. Oh, and it has good music.
の依頼が集中してるの。
天下はエンゼル不動産。強引な地上げや詐欺まがいの買収で悪い噂が絶えない超悪徳企業だ。
It also features an interesting gang of hoodlums. While I had briefly mentioned when did Riku Sanjo become a Roidmute earlier in my review, it is time to go into detail as to why this is my least favorite of the show. Well, it's quite simple really. I do not like Q in the slightest. Not just that, but it centers around him living with his Roidmute doppelganger with excessive amounts of comedy that feels out of place.
早く楽になっちまえよ。どうだこのワンコがどうなってもいいのかどうものどこか話せ年明けからずっと二人いただって
Maybe it was just out of place because I do not like Q. Whatever the case may be, I hated this episode with extreme prejudice.
The only redeeming feature is when Drive does the Car Ranger pose.
Kamen Rider!
The movies and specials. Joey, can you stop with all the bonus material? Can't we just have a show with like one movie, maybe two specials? It's driving me crazy. Okay, where to start? Well, first I should mention there was a Drive Ninja crossover special, which I talked about in my Ninja review. So if you want to know more about that, go see that review. On the subject of crossovers, there's the Kamen Gaim one that features an alien robotic threat coming to Earth after attacking Kota and not Yuna's planet. The Gaim cast deals with this threat initially while Drive has to contend with Kamen Rider Lupin.
Kamen Rider Lupin, ここに誕生.
I will say I was totally expecting Inspector Zenigata's voice to come out of Lieutenant Oda during this scene here. There's a cool battle with some Cybermen. Gaim and Drive swap forms, which sees Drive unable to get into his car. Overall, it wasn't a bad film, though not one of the best. Next up is the superhero Tyson story, Kamen Rider 3. Shocker managed to conquer the multiverse by defeating Ichigo and Nigo after they had believed they had taken Shocker down once and for all. History is altered into a Nazi-like society where Kamen Riders are considered criminals.
世界がショッカーに支配されている。
We get to see a few Rider actors return, including Black and Garen.
子供たちを改造人間などにさせん。
だがカリスもレンゲかなり危険な奴らだぞ。危険？
On top of Kamen Rider 3 giving his best Vin Diesel impersonation. There's a race that dies into Speed Racer-esque hijinks. It was quite enjoyable until the Ninjas had to appear out of nowhere and ruin the whole damn thing. Seriously, why were they in this? They didn't make any sense at all from a story point of view. I guess they were just there to have a mech version of Trideron. Kamen Rider 3 is followed up by a series of specials called Kamen Rider 4. Ooh, I can count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or Ich ni san yon. Rider 4 is yet another Shocker Rider who flies a plane. cool if they'd actually done something remarkable with the notion. They also felt the need to ruin the ending of 5s with Takumi and Kaido returning.
あれほど言ったのにどうしてわかんねえんだよ
At least the music was great, and I did enjoy the Groundhog's Day-like scenario. After all of those, finally comes the summer movie, Surprise Drive, which, you guessed it, features another Evil Drive clone. I will admit though, I love the Tron-like color scheme of this version. Anyway, a kid from the future comes to warn Shinosuke of an impending threat, proclaiming to be his son.
Go! 止めに来たよ、新兄さん。そいつ、誰？俺の息子。だってさ、本当にどうかしちまったんじゃないだろうね。
There was a cool Kamen Rider chaser finisher involved. And I did enjoy the Twisted Metal-like vehicular combat scene. I should also mention that Kamen Rider Ghost made his on-screen debut in this movie, and my god, is he wickedly badass here.
俺は仮面ライダーゴールド
No, really, why didn't he do any of that in his own show? He even appears in the final episode of Drive, where he continued to showcase a much better persona than he had in his own series. They even introduced this cool concept where he guides people back to life. Why didn't they do any of that in his show? Well, whatever. The movie itself was okay. Nothing bad, but nothing jaw-dropping either beyond the scene featuring Ghost. It plays out how you expect it to. The upgrade form Shinosuke receives is quite ugly looking. As for the remaining amounts of specials, oh my god, there's too many to go into every little detail. But we've got a Heart and Mock movie where Heart takes up a rider form. It also has excellent camera work. And the story portion with Mach continues to be rewarding. Even though there was a scene where Mach should have actually died, it was nice to see a post-series movie not give its audience the middle finger as many others have. Alternatively, there's a Chaser movie where he wants to be a real boy that is set during the events of the show that was an utter bore to sit through.
ならば笑ってみせよ。
It also had the characters acting a lot different than they did in the series itself, which is never a good thing.
始まったか。君は完全な正義のマシンなんだ。そこに人間らしい感情をインプットすることには、私は賛成できない。プログラムが乱れる危険性が高い。
What's odd is that it was written by Sanjo, so I have no idea why he felt this way. It just did.
The remaining specials feature a couple of hijinks that involve the cast trying to solve a murder, one about Prototype Drive, which was really worthless,
Lupin's return, and one where we got to see a high-class version of Drive.
Henshin!
I would love to see more of that. The best of them was a two-part short where Brain obtains a Kamen Rider form that looks pretty damn cool.
Henshin!
Overall, I highly enjoyed Kamen Rider Drive. It showed us what a world would be like if cops were actually good people who were efficient at their jobs instead of cowering away in fear all of the time. Thus, I am giving it a well-deserved solid 4 out of 5 grown-ups in spandex. Yes, the first half can be repetitive. The second half is where the show is at its best, which does kinda suck. However, the payoff is most definitely worth it. This is not a Kamen Rider show to miss. Until next time, bye.